Hello and welcome to Handmade Originals. This is the channel where I tackle a range of creative jobs of anything and everything so that you don't have to. No. This is the channel where I tackle a range of creative jobs in the hope, with the aim of encouraging you, giving you confidence and hopefully inspiring you to have a go at your own creative projects yourself. Now, this video was going to be about a project I'm just about to start, which is refurbishing some furniture cushions for my son's girlfriend, Laura. Hello, Laura. However, these cushions are very unique and it's a very niche job. I started doing it and I thought actually this is not going to be relevant to an awful lot of people, so decided to reframe the whole thing. And in this video what I'm going to do is give you some general tips on how to complete creative projects, and I'm going to use the project I'm currently working on to illustrate the points I'm trying to make. I hope that makes sense. Let's get going. So the first thing I do, particularly when you have a daunting project, something you haven't done before, or if it's a particularly big project, is use post-it stickers, well, that's what I use, to separate out the various steps that you have to take in order to get the job done. And I do mention the word done quite vehemently there, because it's very important to plan not just to start the project but to finish it. So my initial thought was this is going to be just I have to repair the tears in these cushions and then I have to dye the velvet grey. So having worked out my 2 steps, the next thing you have to do then is to buy whatever products you need to complete your job. And obviously in my case I needed to buy some dye. Now, I broke the habit of a lifetime and I actually was very organised about it. I worked out the square footage of the surface of my cushions. I looked at what the coverage was on the paint and I realised in fact that I would need 2 bottles. So I now have sufficient to complete my entire project. And I keep emphasising that because there's nothing worse than getting halfway through something and running out of whatever you need, whatever your project is, and then you stop and it's an artificial pause, and then you have to go and get some more dye or order some more dye, and then in the interim you're just waiting and your things are hanging about, they get pushed to the side of the table and you don't kind of very often get back to it, and then you have half-finished jobs lying about. We've all done it. It's time to stop, and that we stop doing that by planning. So make sure you get sufficient of whatever it is you need, whether it's thread or fabric or dye in this case, to complete your job. Right. The next thing you have to do is, when you've got something like this, particularly a product that you're going to use, is can't believe I'm saying this, read the instructions. I speak as someone who never reads the instructions, but to my delight, it actually proved worthwhile in this case because I read the instructions, and one of the most important things it says is to clean the fabric first with an upholstery cleaner, and then after you've cleaned it with an upholstery cleaner to get a clean white cloth which is damp and to wipe it off. So there's no point in me investing time and money in dye and putting dye on this fabric if it's not properly prepared, and then consequently the dye doesn't take, so that's just a complete waste. So the next thing I had to do was to buy, in fact I had some in the house, you can use carpet stain remover, it's the same sort of thing, it works on upholstery, as it says here, upholstery, I'm not just winging it, and my clean white cloth. So I'm quite pleased with myself, I've got everything I need, and I'm also going to, so between repair the tears and dye the velvet, I'm going to clean the velvet with upholstery cleaner. And the other thing that it tells you to do after you've cleaned it and before you dye it is wipe it with a damp cloth. So you can see that when you actually start breaking down the job and thinking it through each various stage, you'll find that you end up with quite a few more steps than what you probably initially anticipated. Whatever your project is, there are always several parameters that you have to consider, I would suggest, and there are 2 that always crop up. One is budget and the other is time. But before we get to those, I want to talk about a third one, which is aesthetics or style. So, for example, I'm making these cushions for, I'm refurbishing these cushions for Laura. Laura, very intrepid young lady, is about to open a vegan bakery stroke cafe, and these two armchairs with their cushions, which I'm refurbishing, are going to go in it. So she wants it to have an authentic sort of shabby chic look, so she doesn't want them looking brand new and pristine. These are going to go into a bakery stroke cafe, which means they will be used by the general public. As such, they have to comply with fire regulations. So another product I have to buy is flame retardant spray, and this has to go on the chairs once they've on the cushions once they've been dyed, and then I also have some little labels that go with this, which I can iron on to the back of the cushions. So if we revisit my list of jobs to complete this project, and don't forget I keep reminding you that you have to plan to complete it, this is what it looks like now. And it's grown a little bit from those first two post-its that we started out with. So first of all, repair the tears. And by this I mean my sort of Frankenstein stitches of just holding the tears together so that I can then take a proper template for the new back panel, which I am going to recover the whole of the back with. I'm also going to have to remove the old tapes, which are peculiar to these cushions, and make new tapes to be attached to the new cover. I'm going to do all of that on my sewing machine before I attach it to the back of the cushions, because obviously once the fabric is on the cushion, it's impossible to get under the sewing machine. And I'm going to have to, when I've made these back panels up, I'm going to have to hand stitch them onto the already existing cushions. The next thing I have to do is clean the velvet with the upholstery cleaner, and then I have to wipe it clean with a damp cloth. Then I need to dye the velvet grey, and then I need to treat it with a flame retardant, and then I need to attach the labels to prove to building control that I have complied with their fire regulations. So the path, as you can see, has grown quite a lot. So I'm pleased that I didn't start before I'd worked out where I was going to finish. And also my list of purchases and things I'm going to need has grown as well. I'm just going to take you along the list of things I need to complete this project. You will obviously have different things you need for yours. So I've got my carpet stain remover, which is also for upholstery. I've got my white cloth for cleaning the damp cloth for cleaning the carpet stain remover off. I've got my 2 bottles of charcoal coloured grey dye, which should be sufficient for the amount of coverage I've got to get. I've got my little, this is actually from an Indian takeaway for putting the dye in, and a little brush for applying the dye. I've got my upholstery needle, and I've got a strong thread. I've got other needles which I will use for hand sewing. I'm not sure yet which one will work, but I've got different ones to try. I've got my unpicker, so that I can unpick the tapes which are attached to the old back, and then I can renew them. I've got my chalk pencil, which I can use for marking on the new back cover where the tapes will go. I've got my scissors for cutting the fabric. I've got the fabric, which is going to be cotton drill, which is super strong. And finally, I've got my flame retardant spray, and I'm not showing you them, but I've got these tiny little labels which iron onto the back of the newly refurbished cushions. And most importantly, I've got a cup of tea. Right, one more thing to consider. So there are 3 more things I want to consider. 2 I've already mentioned. I'm going to go back to those now. So let's start with the thorny one, especially if you're British, because we don't like talking about money. Budget, which is money. So if you are, a lot of this depends on whether you're doing something for love or money. If you are doing something as a commercial creative project, creative people universally around the planet undervalue their skills, which is just the way it is. And actually, even if you don't undervalue yourself, other people undervalue how long they think something is going to take. But for example, These cushions, if they were going to be refurbished professionally, I have got a quote for £320 per chair. So that would be £640. That's for a complete refurbishment, new foam and everything. And I think, oh, that's quite a lot of money. But actually, when you consider how much time and effort goes into it, don't think it's terribly unreasonable. And also, why should we charge ourselves out at the minimum rate, which in this country is just above £10 per hour? So that would be, okay, about 30 hours work. But, we are people who have skills, and we should value ourselves as such. However, that's sort of by the by. This is a project which I'm doing not for money, but for love. And for fun, and also because I've never done it before, so it teaches me skills. So for all those reasons, I'm kind of happy to do it, and it doesn't really matter how long it takes. So that brings me on to my next consideration, which I also mentioned previously, which is time. And time is obviously related to money. You can go backwards and forwards on those two. But the time I want to talk about here is in relation to two things. Firstly, do you have a deadline? I do, because Laura's opening that bakery/cafe on the 16th of December, which is only in, oh crikey, just over 2 weeks. So yeah, so number one, I need to crack on with it. And the second thing I want to say is you need to work out roughly in your head how long you think it's going to take you to do it. And set aside time in your diary, block it out, as they always say you should do when you've got projects to do at work. If the fact that it's a creative project doesn't mean it has a lower priority. It's something you want to do, so you invest your time in getting it done. And please note again the past tense, get it done, or the future perfect tense actually, if we're going to be pedantic. So the focus here is on getting it done, not starting it, but getting it finished. Because work in progress around the house, which just lies there and is left untended and unfinished, saps your energy and your self-esteem, because it looks at you accusingly as if to say, you didn't finish me. Get it done, get it finished. So what I would suggest is block out time in your diary as to when you're going to get the project done, and however long you allocate to it, double it. If you think about builders, they always take twice as long as you think they're going to. I know you get the rare one that doesn't, who is probably very experienced and knows what they're doing. But if this is something new particularly, it will always take you longer than you think it's going to. Right. And my third and final point, third and final point, whatever your project is, health and safety, which I know is a bit of a yawn, but actually is extremely sensible. So, for example, with me, I always you'll probably find a video where I didn't do this, but I always try and tie my hair out of the way, like this, once I get going. Because otherwise I'm sort of doing this and I either get paint on my face or in my hair, or I get hair in my eye, and then I'm sort of like, whatever. Anyway, so I'm a bit of a cartoon like that. So, but if you're handling paint, dye or anything corrosive, rubber gloves. Also, anything like anything you're spraying which is airborne, or something like dye or paint, open the window so that you're not inhaling something toxic. What else? You want to make sure that this is something I never do. I usually wear my best jumper when I'm dyeing and ruin it completely. Put an apron on, and also protect your table. I'm not going to show you the table, you know what a table looks like, but anyway, protect your table as well, so that it's not just you that's protected, it's your environment as well. And finally, since it's very much of the moment, let's talk about mental health. Make it fun. Don't turn it into a burden, and that feeds into the make sure you've calculated your time correctly, and make sure you've got everything you need before you start, so that you're not kind of halfway through thinking, I've got wet hands, but I need to go out and get some more, blah, 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 whatever it is you don't have. Sort it out in advance. Prepare to succeed. Prepare to finish, and just enjoy doing it. And if you can rope somebody in to do it with you, that is great fun, as you'll know from my last video that I did with Nat, fixing my daughter's bed. But I'm just talking to you, and that's fun. So I hope that this video gives you lots of food for thought and lots of encouragement, and hopefully a bit of inspiration to think of something you want to do and get on and do it and finish it. Get it done. I'll see you next time.